What's up guys, Reese here, and today we're going to be asking the question, is the iPhone 3G still worth purchasing today? So let's find out. The iPhone 3G was released on July 11, 2008 for the two prices of $199 for an 8GB model and $299 for a 16GB model. It featured the same Samsung 32-bit RISC ARM CPU, which was underclocked at 412MHz with 128MB of memory, and featured a 3.5-inch 320x480 display at 163 pixels per inch. All exactly the same as the iPhone 2G. It has an 1150 mAh battery, which is smaller than the 2G, the same 850, 900, 1800 and 1900 MHz quad-band GSM GPRS edge support, but also has 850, 900, 1800 and 1900 MHz tree-band UMTS HSDPA 3.6, meaning it has 3G networking support. It also has 802.11 Wi-Fi and Bluetooth 2.0. It initially shipped with iPhone OS 2.0 but maxes out at iOS 4.2.1, which is the version I'm using in this review. As far as I.O., the iPhone 3G has a microphone, 30-pin dock connector and a speaker along the bottom, a flush headphone jack so any aux cable will work with it, a SIM card tray and a power button along the top, the mute switch and the volume rockers on the left side, an earpiece and the home button on the front, and a camera on the back. The main selling point of the iPhone 3G was that it could connect to 3G networks, unlike the 2G, which was maxed out at Edge. It also shipped with built-in GPS, and the price was dramatically lowered from the 2G, meaning it sold a lot more units. The 3G also introduced the first new color for the iPhone. The 16GB model was available in white. The one I have here is pretty beat up because strangely it is hard to find a white 3G for a low price, probably because there were less of them made, but this is what I've got for the time being. But is it still worth purchasing today? Let's find out. Although this iPhone does support up to iOS 4.2.1, many apps are flat out not supported on it at all. The two third-party apps which I was able to install are Facebook and Facebook Messenger, but both run very slow, as you would probably expect. Facebook does work, but scrolling through your feed or even attempting to scroll through your feed is very slow, and Facebook Messenger would not let me sign in at all, so even the apps which you can download are unusable. So for this review, I can only really test the apps which are built in. Now, I think it's safe to say that any apps which could work on the 2G will also work on the 3G, so I'm going to be focusing on the apps which ran a bit slower on the 2G or flat out wouldn't work at all. Messages works completely fine. It is still slow sending text because it struggles to find strong signal, and the small screen is bad for typing, and it still has no emojis. Photos does not lower the quality of image like the 2G did, but it is still very basic, and you can basically make albums and look at your pictures, that's it. There is still no video support even if you sync it with your computer. The camera takes a while for the shutter to open, and even when it does, when you're taking pictures, it stays shut for a long time, and there is still no video support. The Stocks app does work, but it is completely unsupported by the servers, so there is not much point in using it. The Maps app does work, and it is much faster at updating than the 2G. If you saw my last video, you'll know the Maps app does work on the 2G, but it just takes a while to update. So I'd say on the 3G, it is still very usable compared to today's standards. Another app which works, but is flat out unsupported because the servers are outdated, is the Weather app. You can go on it, but that's just about it because, as I said, the servers are unsupported, so the weather will not update. The Voice Memos app works fine, it records them, it lets you listen to them back, but due to a bad microphone and speaker combination, the voice recordings sound terrible. This is an audio recording from the iPhone 3G to show you how bad the quality of the microphone is. iTunes works, but it again, like the 2G, won't let me download any music. I've had to sync the music I'm showing in this video from my computer. So you can load it if you want to, but there isn't much point in it. The App Store does work, and it will actually let me download apps, unlike the 2G, but many apps are flat out unsupported, so there isn't much point in using it anyway. The Phone app works completely fine, just as it did on the 2G, but I'm choosing to include it here so you can get an idea of what the phone calls sound like.
Hi, how are you? I'm doing really bad makeup right now and I look like a child. Okay, hello. Yeah, did you even do any work today? Because I did.
Yeah. Mail sort of works. It actually let me sign in this time, but it keeps saying my password was incorrect when I know it wasn't, so it still renders itself pretty unusable. Safari is a bit faster at building basic websites than it was to the 2G, but it is still pretty slow. And finally, the iPod app does work and you can get everything out of it you want to, but the speakers are awful, as you will hear now.
Skeletons in my closet. I got secrets that'll shake you to your bones. It ain't worth all the drama. Might be easier if I just die alone. Energies in full rotation. Knew I would regret ya. Paying for my past mistakes. You're bad.
And as for using the 3G networking, it is completely unsupported on this device. When it comes to the camera, the iPhone 3G has the exact same camera as the 2G, meaning you already have a pretty good idea of how the pictures are going to look. It's a 2 megapixel sensor, so in any situation you're in, the pictures are going to be pretty low quality. But I'm going to throw some up anyway, just so you can see what it's like. When taking pictures in the daylight, the camera still struggles. Most pictures are distorted and the colors are completely washed out. Low light images look even worse, as you'd probably expect. Even less light is getting into that tiny sensor, resulting in grainy, undetailed images. And as for video, the 3G does not support video at all. When it comes to the battery life, the 3G performs terribly, with the battery barely even lasting 2 hours. The battery in the 3G is even smaller than the one in the 2G, so it isn't really surprising that it performs worse than its predecessor, but it's still a bit upsetting when you think that this phone was meant to be better than the original iPhone. Both of my 3Gs are the exact same, and I did have a third one which I didn't get around to testing, but I gave it to my friend because I didn't need it. But I'd expect that most of them that you buy today, unless they were completely unused whatsoever, will be the same with the battery life. And as I say, the battery life will always vary depending on who you're buying it from. If you bought it for someone who used it all day every day, it's going to be much worse than someone who used it for, let's say, an hour a day. So yeah, just keep that in mind if you're looking for them. When it comes to the speed of the iPhone 3G, no surprise, it is just as slow as the 2G, as it has the exact same 412 MHz CPU. Doing basic things like swiping around the home screen and opening apps is very slow, as it only has 128 megabytes of RAM to work with, so just like the 2G, I'd imagine that gets filled up pretty quickly. However, once you're actually inside some of the apps, they actually perform pretty well. Messages is a good example of this, and it will do everything you need to do at a reasonable speed. Now moving on to how the phone has aged, the 3G was supported until 2011 with the release of iOS 5, meaning it had 3 solid years of support from Apple. Today, most third-party apps won't download due to old software, but the ones that are built in work fairly well. The general speed of the phone is very slow, and the battery does die pretty quickly, so these are the 2 major downsides to using the phone in 2021. Overall, I would not recommend getting this phone with the idea of using it as your daily driver at all. Mainly because of how bad the battery is, but also because they're kind of hard to find. There are a few that I've seen selling on eBay for around 30 quid, like the ones I've got here, but it's not uncommon to see them going for hundreds if they're in perfect condition. And as I said, if it's a white 3G, it's even more expensive, so for this reason alone, I'd just say it's not worth it whatsoever. However, if you are a collector like me, then I would recommend trying to get one of these, because as I said about the 2G, one day the price of these should probably skyrocket, and if you need some money, you can sell it for a pretty decent price. Probably not as much as the 2G is going to be worth, because that's the original iPhone, but still a decent amount. And just one final little fun fact, the 3G has actually been dubbed Apple's most forgettable phone, probably because it came straight after the 2G and there was that much hype around the 2G, it was kind of like deafened from all of the public attention. But yeah, there's a little fun fact for you. So yeah, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it helpful, please don't forget to smash that like button, press subscribe, and click the little bell so you'll be notified whenever I upload, and leave a comment down below. So yeah, see you later. Bye.